This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. During tax season, your personal info travels to a lot of places, between payroll, your tax consultant, and the IRS. If your W-2 gets exposed, that's just the ticket for identity thieves. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it guaranteed or your money back. Don't let identity thieves take you for a ride. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Reclamation Podcast, where our goal is to help you reclaim good practices for following Jesus. If we haven't met yet, my name is Tony, and I'm your host. With over a decade in the local church, I care deeply and passionately about helping you connect with Jesus in very practical ways. Today's episode is a father-daughter combo, girl-dad. It's so close to my heart. And actually, before I even hit record, they got to meet Shiloh. And so you'll hear them talk about Shiloh and our relationship. And just, man, I want so much to be a good girl dad to my daughter. And whether you are a girl dad or you know one, this is a conversation you probably want to jump into. Jay and Rayanne Payleitner are just beautiful people who share their heart and have so much to offer us in our conversation today. So now, without any further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Jay and Rayanne. Jay and Rayanne, thank you guys so much for being here today.
Tony, what a privilege to hang out with you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, Tony.
Ray, I want to start with you. I love to ask the question from a macro perspective on calling, right? And so, Ray, we'll go you first, and then Jay. How would you describe the calling that God has placed on your life?
Wow, that's a big question. Big question.
I just come out swinging. I come out swinging every time.
Tony, I'm so looking forward to hearing this answer. She has to answer. That's the kind of question, Tony. That's the kind of question that Dad wants to ask her daughter. But it's hard for a dad to ask that. But so there you go, Ray.
There you go.
Rayanne, what was it? What was it again, Tony? What was the question?
Yeah, Rayanne, how would you describe the calling that God has placed on your life?
Well, again, real big question. And I think even in the book, I say, dads, don't ask that question. Wait for them to talk to you about it. But I'll give you a pass on this one, Tony. When it comes to calling, I kind of learned early on. I was a young woman, child who made a lot of plans and kept thinking about kind of what the long-term vision for my life was in my own head. And I had an uncle growing up who every time he saw me, because he didn't see me all the time, but every time he saw me a few times a year, he goes, okay, what's the plan? Because he liked hearing me talk about where my plan was and where I thought I would be, in 20 years. And I quickly realized in my life that our human plans don't always get to be on the front burner, right? They often get cast to the side. And so when it comes to plans versus calling, what I've kind of realized is really focusing on doing the work that's in my hands. That's the series of verses that I really have held on to these last 10 years, when kind of my plans just kind of keep getting thrown out the window, but I still get to wake up every day and be a part of the world and do the work in it. And so my calling as I see it is to love the people around me as best I can, for as long as I can. And then when it comes to the work that I do the work that's in my hands and do it well. And it'll all work out. If you do the work well and you love the people around you, that's my calling today. Maybe I'll have a different calling, in a couple of years. But I think that one has treated me well ever since I stopped making plans and started looking for purpose.
I love that. Jay, what about you? You've written over 30 books. You're speaking all over the country. How would you describe the calling that God has placed on your life?
It's all about that He uses it all. I can look back and see my ridiculous college degree, which I won't even tell you what it was. I sold photocopiers for a while for A.B. Dick. Hi, I'm the A.B. Dick guy. Don't buy that Xerox Minolta or some copier that you recognize. I was in advertising on Michigan Avenue doing ads for Corona Beer and Midway Airlines, and I led the creative team that named Sun Chips, and so I was honing my skills as a writer and meeting deadlines. And then I might have got fired from that job, and I ended up at a little Christian ad agency where I was suddenly producing Josh McDowell Radio. Many of your listeners know Josh McDowell, More Than a Carpenter. I produced his radio program for 14 years. How did that happen? I just kind of fell into that. So my calling is really about trust, that no matter what happens, the crud, the good stuff, I'm just going to trust that. It's kind of like Rayanne said, and that's a great verse. I wish I could remember the reference. Whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might. That's one of our favorites. We've talked about that. And so it's trusting that God has something before me. And the churches we've been to, we've gone through. We just changed churches a couple of years ago. That's a really weird thing to do that. But again, it's following God's call and trusting that. So it's about trust. I think it is. Should we ask Rayanne? Should we ask Tony what his calling is?
Absolutely. Throw the spotlight back on him. Yeah.
Whoa! What is happening here? My calling is the Lord has just burdened on my heart is to make disciple makers, and to be obedient. Joyful obedience is the word that God has given me in several seasons. It won't leave me alone. So, yeah, I make disciple makers, and I'm joyfully obedient to wherever the Lord calls me. So
I'm going to add on to what I said. I have done a lot of international ministry for the Bible League. And other ministries. I've done sending Bibles, millions of Bibles, radio programs I've worked on to China. I went to Russia 4 times with Josh McDowell. I spoke to 1,000 dads just outside Warsaw, Poland, right before COVID. So this international ministry has come to me, but that's not my jam. That's not who I am. I look at my neighborhood and the community and the hurting men that I see in and around when I go speaking to men right here in the Midwest, especially. So that even though I've had this ministry, it's a good example. I've had this ministry outside the country. Boy, my heart is with dads and men and families, husbands and wives, marriage here in the country. So that's more specific, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think it's a beautiful lead in to my next question. Rayanne, let's start with you on this one as well. Mostly because I like to hear your answer first. When it comes to discernment, right? Because I know that this is your first book, and it kind of happened by accident. We'll get into that in just a moment. But how do you discern God's voice in your life?
Another big swing. How do I discern God's voice in my life? Beautiful question. I think at the end of the day, I am of the firm belief that God gives us the tools that we need to be able to do our part in fostering the relationship with Him. Obviously, He is omnipresent. Obviously, he can make his presence known, and he can do anything, and all things are possible, right? And I think that just as in every good relationship, both parties need to kind of come put their toe to the line. And it's not because he can't cross that line if he didn't want to. He could, blast off the wall to my room right now and make his heavenly presence known. But he wants us to walk towards him. And I think that he did that by giving us the tools. We're all unique. I personally like using biblical references. You know what I mean? I do a lot of study. I do a lot of deeper conversations, whereas other people might connect more through worship or through extended prayer or through, a different discipleship methods. And from my perspective, I try to hone in on his voice in Scripture and how I see his voice manifest in other people's lives. And that's how I've kind of worked to hone it. And I think he allows me to do it that way because he knows that that's how my brain and heart work. That's how I relate to the people in my life. And I think that he does that for everyone. We all speak to each other in different ways, and we all speak and listen to him in different ways. And so that's personally how I do it. and understanding that I have human ears, right? And so sometimes I get it wrong. But I try to keep people around me to remind me who I am and who God is. And so if I'm getting it wrong, if my discernment, meter is off, I have people who love me, who are around me, that can help me get on track. And then I have the scripture behind it to help remind me when I'm feeling cloudy.
I love that. Jay, I'm going to ask you a similar version of the same question. And specifically, I think I would love to hear how what is the next book to write, right? So, 30 some odd books. And what I appreciate about your scope of writing is that it's family and relational based, but it's also vast. And so how do you know that God called you to write this book about being a girl dad?
Yeah. Girl Dad is book number 38 for me, and it's book number 1 for Rayanne. I think it's about the responsibilities that I have coming out of my life. That's where the books come from. It's like, this is something I'm dealing with now, or a quest that I'm on now. And I start thinking about it. It's like, well, if I'm dealing with this quest, this responsibility, then there must be millions of other people who are doing that. And so and then if I can con a publisher into taking that idea, the easy answer is literally just last week, I asked GPT, the AI. I said, what should be my next books? What should be Jay Payleitner's next books? And it was something on parenting teens, something on grandparents, something on the power of prayer. But I'm not going to let the artificial intelligence decide my next book. Also, on a very practical level, I've surrounded myself with all kinds of gifted publishing experts, my agent and publishers that I know and trust, and who know me and love me and count on me. And frankly, Tony, they give me book titles. They say, Jay, man, we need a book on this. Most publishers, and actually Rayanne's brother, Randall, is the publisher at Moody Bible Institute. He's the publisher there. He's in charge of the whole thing there. And we have conversations. But most books they begin with some kind of proposal, and the publishers go, yes or no. But because I've been doing this for so long, I get emails from publishers. Hey, Jay, can you write a book on this? And that's how I did a book on conflict resolution. I did a book on, my best-selling book is 52 Things Kids Need from a Dad. Think about this. We'll move on. My best-selling book is 52 Things Kids Need from a Dad. Sold 200,000 copies. And the publisher, Harvest House, said, Jay, this book is going well. Can you write a book for the same audience, but think of them as husbands? So instead of what kids need, do what wives need. 52 things wives need from a husband. And I said, I said, you want me to write this book? Yeah, Jay, we'll send you a contract and an advance check. And I said, I can write that book. So anyway, that kind of launched my ministry on marriage, which is good news because I have a great marriage. And my wife pours into me and I pour into her. And I may have had more impact some ways on marriages than I have on dads. So is it too long of an answer, Tony? Is that too long of an answer?
There's no right or wrong answer here, Jay. We're just talking.
Okay, there you go.
I am interested, Rayanne, as someone, you've watched your dad write 38 books. You've seen him. I'm guessing where he's recording from now is his study. If I was going to guess that's probably the writing lab, and it's probably just looking at kind of his personality type. There's probably books stacked everywhere and paper all over the place. And I've got the gift of discernment. So it's probably like, I can imagine as a young daughter watching your dad write and write and write and pour over. I'm curious what's kind of your, in reflection, what's your takeaway from watching your dad serve the Lord in this way?
Well, you are exactly right, Tony, in that room there, which maybe has the footprint of a king size bed. Has been his office is about 10 paces away from the kitchen table. And my whole life, we moved into that house when I was 3. And so my whole awareness of him has been in this room. And a lot of beautiful things come from that. One, he was at every one of my softball or basketball games or plays because he was home and he was present, and he could work from 10 p.m. to midnight if he needed to, if he wanted to be at my 4 o'clock softball game, which is an incredible gift that very few of my teammates got. But children across the board, because, life, there's a very real reality of life just bringing up those challenges for dads. But watching him write in his ministry to write, to get back to your question, I mean, I remember the first time that I held his first book, which was called Once Upon a Tandem. I held it in my hands, and he was so excited because I also knew even before that he had always wanted to write a book. He was a writer. He had always, made his work and money and everything like that through writing in different ways, whether it be advertising or radio producing or scripting, things like that. And so watching him go from Once Upon a Tandem all the way up here through Girl Dad, I can tell you that of the 38, I've read all of them except for one, which is what husbands need from their wives. And that wasn't a subject matter that I wanted to listen to his opinion on, just because I know the players. I know the players involved. I stopped reading that one about a half a chapter, and I go, you know what? I'm sure it's great.
Hard pass.
Exactly. But he would always send us, as in his children, my 4 brothers and I, he would send us the PDF of the book before it was even printed. And so I remember on the backs of buses, as I was going to sporting events or up late at night. And when I was living in Ireland, I was an RA. And so I printed it out so I could read it while I was on a shift, and a bunch of my friends found it. That was a whole different thing. But I've watched him evolve, and I've watched him grow. And it is a good question. What book do you write next, right? You have the kind of the first 10 in lock, but then after that, you go in and out of these phases of I'm not sure what I have to offer next, and then the idea comes, whether it's from a publisher, whether it's from something that my mom says, or just someone who comes up to him at one of the speaking events who has a question that hasn't been answered by his book. So watching him evolve as I've grown up, we both have kind of evolved on our parallel paths together, and beautiful to be able to watch him touch people's lives in these 38 different ways.
Jay, I was really excited to read about how this book came to fruition, specifically Rayanne's part in it. I'm wondering if you could tell the story about the process, and then maybe kind of paint the picture. This book is creatively written in a way that you don't find very often, with insights and reality checks and kind of these questions, and it's beautifully put together in that way that it's short, choppy bites. So can you tell the story how Rayanne's part came to fruition, and then the creativity kind of model that you guys put together collectively?
Yes, it's a fascinating story to tell, and gives you some viewpoint of the underworld of publishing. 38 books, and 37 of those books, I sent in the manuscript. I've got the contract. I'm writing the book. I send in the manuscript, and the publisher says, well, that's great. We won't have to, no rewrites, no nothing. We'll just do a grammar check and maybe just kind of tighten some things up. But great. Okay. With that in mind, I get a book contract to write a book that's for dads of daughters, maybe even book for dads of little daughters. It's kind of a cutesy kind of thing that really is going to focus on teddy bear picnics and daddy-daughter dances and the cute little things that dads should be doing if they have time, if they can, and to be in the lives of the little daughters, and maybe some lists of places to go and such. Okay, so I'm working on this thing, and then I say, hey, to my Rayanne is gone from West Point now. She's working in going to school in Dublin, Ireland, and I'm realizing, you know what? I would love her input on this. So I send her the partial manuscript, and she doesn't just have a comment. She writes a long paragraph on something like, "Dad, what about this? This really needs to be in there." And so I asked my publisher, "Hey, could my daughter?" I was going to surprise Rayanne with this idea. Could my daughter co-write this book with me? Because I know she has that gift. And they said, what a great idea. We'll even put her name on the cover. So I'm looking forward to this. So I write these 10 brilliant chapters on my daughter and her hopes and dreams, my daughter and her friends, my daughter and her boyfriends, my daughter and her teams and teammates, my daughter and her mom, my daughter and this fallen world, my daughter and her time with dad, with me, kind of. Okay, so I've got all these wonderful chapters going, and they're brilliant. And Rayanne spends every chapter now ends with about 1,500 words of Rayanne, Tony, telling me why I was wrong.
Listen, I wanted to see how you were going to approach it, because the reality checks they're not kid gloves.
No, they are not.
And so the point is, we didn't write the book together. I wrote my chapters, and then she commented on, and it wasn't really, Rayanne, help me out here. Help me out here. How did you approach those? You're part of the book.
Oh, absolutely. It was me telling him how he was wrong, for sure. No. What it really was is, and it was what I had done before. This wasn't a new thing. I wasn't actually, when he first asked me, hey, can you give me your notes? This is what he had done before on other books. That's why I was reading them on the backs of buses, right? Why I was reading those manuscripts is because I just wanted to make sure that I always do a control F for my name, right, in his books, and make sure everything's lined up there. But also just to fill out any gaps. We've had these conversations around our kitchen table for as long as I can remember. Or, Rayanne, I have 37. I have 37 things that daughters need from their dad. Help me get number 38. And we would workshop how to work up to that 52 mark. And so, honestly, how I approached the book was that kind of feedback. And you can ask anyone. I like to call it being realistic. Some might call it pessimism. I don't know, something like that. But I don't play with kid gloves. And so, what I wanted to do, and everything my dad writes in the book is right. It's good advice, excellent insights. But what I wanted to do was give it context, right? I wanted to give it context to who their daughter is, not just as their daughter, because, to a dad, your daughter is always going to be your daughter, always going to be your little girl in some ways, always going to be your, partner in crime in some ways. That's who she is when you look at her, and that's a wonderful, beautiful thing. But she is all of these other things too. She's also, a woman in the world. She's also going to be forging her own path. She is going to have those hopes and dreams. And so I wanted to give that context and perspective to the dads who were reading the book. And the reality checks, really, a few times I do say, I hate to disagree with my dad. I do say that on a number of occasions. But most of the time, it's not the opposite. It's more just giving them the different angle of looking at it.
It occurs to me, Tony, if I may, my part of the chapters, I have insights for dads regarding, how to deal with bad coaches, or your ex is not your enemy, or celebrate your daughter's defiance sometimes. But you mentioned reality checks, and Rayanne, you did too. Some examples would be in the very first chapter on hopes and dreams. Part of my insights is, your daughter these days, because of the culture and the opportunities for daughters, your daughter can be anything she wants to be. And then Rayanne was quick to say in her reality check, go ahead, Rayanne.
No, she can't. Yeah. But of course she can't. Of course she can't be anything, right? If right. She's been playing basketball for 10 years and still can't dribble with her left hand, she probably isn't going to be in the WNBA. Or
Sure.
if she struggles with sophomore year chemistry, probably not going to bring home the Nobel Prize in it. So it's
Tony, you've had these conversations with Shiloh. You've got an 11-year-old daughter, and you
Yeah.
tell her right now that, am I right, that Shiloh, you can be anything you want to be. Does she buy into
for
that?
the most part? Yeah. Well, I think with some caveats, right? Like I'm a little bit more, she's at this point, she's not going to be, she's probably never going to be a dunk of basketball, right? Like there's hey, we always say that Milton Burgers do hard things, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like hard work and vision opens up a lot of doors, and we trust in the Lord. So like that, it's kind of that combo of like, you can do anything you want with hard work and trusting in the Lord.
But if you're talking to a girl dad, your girl dad who's got a little 8-year-old, you want him to kind of say, I think you can be anything you want to be, but that has to soften or change as you realize what her gifts are later on. And then because our job kind of as a dad is to help our daughter find her sweet spot. Because, she's girls these days are being pulled in two different directions.
Yeah, that's right.
That they're supposed to, shoot for the stars and be everything any man could ever be, kind of thing. And then the flip flop of that is, if your daughter, maybe ultimately she wants to be a stay-at-home mom and raise a few babies, that kind of thing. So your daughter, girl dads out there listening, your daughter's going to be pulled in two directions, maybe 5 directions, as a matter of fact. And stay with her, help her find her sweet spot, be there to listen to her. As Rayanne often says, if I may, keep listening so that she'll finally ask you, Dad, what do you think I should be? She'll ask you, Dad, what do you think my gifts are? So you want to stay in her life and earn the right for her to ask you that question is kind of the goal. So again, reality, I would say something, and Rayanne would have a reality check.
Well, and just to clarify on that particular reality check, I do start off a little bit harsh, but the real conclusion of that reality check about helping, about whether your daughter can be anything she wants you to be, is for dads to actually understand that, she can't be everything. She can't be anything, but what she could be anything. I know it's a little bit of a tongue twister, but it's the idea of not letting your experience as a man in the world and your age group and everything like that, not letting your experience as a person put your daughter into a box, and you want her to surprise you, and you want her to do things that you never imagined. And so that was the nicer second half of that reality check, which many of them have. She can't be anything. She can't be everything, but what she could end up being could be anything, and to just let your imagination run wild.
Over the past several days, 3 females have been found dead.
Looks like someone's going after these girls.
Then they have to know to watch their backs.
Streaming March 13th.
You really want what happened to this one that happened to you?
Exactly why I need to keep going on this.
Starring Emmy Award winner Amanda Seyfried.
I'm worried about what you're gonna find.
So am I.
Long Bright River, a limited series, streaming March 13th, only on Peacock.
And I got to say, the reality checks are my favorite part of the book, because I get to hear Rayanne's voice in my head as I'm reading.
Yeah. Hey guys, just pausing this conversation with Jay and Rayanne to remind you now is the time to subscribe to the Spirit and Truth Substack. It's a blog that comes out twice a week and is all about helping you be a spirit-led leader. So whether you're leading a small group, a church, or just a team at your office, and you want to lean into what it means to be spirit-led, this is a great resource for you. It comes straight to your email box, easy to consume. It's not that long. It's got a team of writers who are going to help you grow in the process. You can connect by going to spiritandtruth.substack.com. I am curious, speaking about Rayanne's voice, and Rayanne, I'm going to start this question with you, and then Jay, I'm interested to hear your thought on from your perspective. What's really evident in the writing, and then now that we've spent some time together, what's really clear is that as a father-daughter combo, you guys have an equal voice. and that it's an equal voice in the book. And it's clear that your dad has a ton of respect for you, Rayanne, and he nurtured your voice in some way, shape, or form. And as a dad to an 11-year-old, strong, fierce princess, how do I intentionally foster that equality and that strengthened voice so that Shiloh and so that all the dads listening, their daughters, feel like they can use their voice, even if it's to go in what seems or may feel like opposition to their dad?
Another excellent question that I've not gotten before. I think the key, sometimes people ask like, especially with this book, right? Oh, you're dead and you must have a great relationship. Has it always been that way? And while it has always at its core been a great relationship, it's never always been the same. Our relationship has evolved as we have evolved. You start out as, your dad is a superhero, nothing can stop him. He can do anything, he does things that seem like magic, when you're 6 years old, the things that he can scoop you up, and he's just this kind of mythical figure to you. But he can't be that way forever because superheroes don't exist and we're people and we evolve. And as girls grow up into young women and then into women, they get the reality of the world, but they evolve and their own experiences change them. My dad was 35, 36 when I was born. And so he's evolved over the last 30 years. Just obviously I did because I had to go through all of the changes of development, but he also evolved. He became a 1,000 different things and learned things and went through things just as I did. And so I think that the most important thing, I think sometimes girl dads try to latch on to that princess relationship, which there is always going to be a little bit of that, always, because it's your dad, it's your little girl, but allow your relationship to evolve with you and with your daughter. And sometimes you're going to evolve in opposing directions. Some points you're going to evolve together. And if you stay with it long enough and you have conversations are the greatest tool. I think my definition of relationship is just a series of conversations. That's all any relationship is, a series of conversations. That's how you develop trust. That's how you get to know each other. That's where fights come from. That's where, as you're forging iron against iron, just be present, have conversations with your daughter and allow the relationship to evolve. Because if you allow it to evolve with you, then you're going to end up with a relationship of peers. You're going to end up with a relationship where you actually get to be friends with your daughter, and you get to, the kind of disciplinary gets to be shed a little bit. The worrier, the hard and fast protector gets to get shed a little bit, so that when you're 65 and 30, you get to have that peer relationship, and that I think is going to be the longest and hopefully best era for a girl-dad relationship.
Phenomenal answer. Jay, what about you? What do you think that you did intentionally or maybe just lucked into that kind of fostered that voice in your daughter?
Yeah, and this would be something that I'm hoping to give you a few things right now that a girl dad out there can latch on to and go, oh, I can do this. And all the books say date your daughter. I understand that. That's as a kind of a good concept, and keep that top of mind. But if we go a little bit deeper than that, have what I call our stuff, stuff that's just you and Shiloh. Tony and Shiloh have their little secrets. Maybe even stuff that mom doesn't know about, or maybe she knows about, but Shiloh doesn't know that she knows about. There's stuff, could be our movie, our TV show, our book, our bench, our table at McDonald's, that kind of thing. So our stuff, so that she can, there's a foundation you're building there, a rock, because Dad, you got to be the rock, the foundation that gives her the courage to go out and explore the world and do great things or try hard things, and then because she knows Dad's going to be there. So that would be one thing. You be that foundation and have our stuff that she can always count on. And then it's as we've already kind of said, listen more than talk. If you can get some of those open-ended questions going, that's a wonderful thing. And then I'm not sure if this is a specific, but more of a generic kind of feel. Don't let your girl ever fall into that victim mentality. You need to empower her. Let her know how strong she is. Let her know what her gifts are, and say, "Boy, I'm looking forward to. Oh, that's a gift you have, Shiloh. That's a gift you have, Rayanne. I'm wondering how God's going to use that. I'm so excited to see how God is going to use your gift in this world, because." Guys, Rayanne, Tony, friends listening, girl dads listening, we live in a fallen world.
Yeah.
And that was one of the chapters that was we started getting real kind of deep in, but here's the point on that. Dad, enlist allies, because your daughter's going to come up against some crud. Enlist allies, adult allies, and know who she trusts. And it's not just the youth pastor. There's somebody down the street maybe, or a friend of a friend who is going to be an ally that you can talk about what girls are going through, and maybe what specifically your daughter or their daughter is going through. And then I'll end my little speech with this idea. I'm counting on Rayanne. It's a fallen world. I'm counting on Rayanne being part of the solution. Tony, you can count or need to set Shiloh up for her and all our kids, but maybe daughters especially, to be part of the solution to the world around them. And no pressure, Rayanne, no pressure.
Okay, Jay, let me come back to you with another question here.
Sure.
As this podcast releases, the book is releasing the same week. And as this book gets into the world, what is your prayer for dads specifically? Rayanne, I'm going to ask you to give a prayer for what your prayer is for daughters in just a moment. So, Jay, what is your prayer for the dads who are reading this resource?
I want them to make sure that their daughter feels loved and has the ability to love. And it might even be that simple, because she has to love herself. She has to love herself. She has to love her dad. That's what we want. And she has to love God. But also the flip side of that, she needs to be able to receive dad's love and give love to dad. And you have to receive God's love and understand that. The sacrifice that you were created in his image, that he sent his son to die on the cross and give you a purpose in the future. So it's not a spiritual book in that there's so much practical stuff here. And I know for sure the dads will buy this book who aren't, because it doesn't say Jesus or God on the cover.
Yeah.
Dads will pick up this book and read it. And I hope some non-believers read it and go, wow, maybe this God stuff kind of works. That's a scripture verse I hadn't heard before, kind of thing. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. But also, I hope it does gangbusters for Rayanne, so she gets a few more book contracts, and so that's my little side benefit of this whole project, is that Rayanne, she's got a great career going. But it sure is fun to see your name in print, and that's a really selfish thing. But I hope you. So go out and buy the book called Girl Dad, guys, if I can say that. So
absolutely, and I'll tell you that this book is what I affectionately call sneaky Jesus. It's not overtly Jesus; it's sneaky Jesus,
good.
which is a beautiful thing. Okay, Rayanne, what's your prayer for the daughters of dads who are going to read this book?
Well, you know what? Honestly, it's the prayer that I have for most of the people in my life, which is the same prayer that Jesus prayed in Gethsemane, which was that they not be taken from the world. It's actually, I think, one of the only Bible references I put in our book is this whole prayer for him, that they not be removed from the world, but protected inside of it. Especially in our Christian world, I've seen a lot of people, because Christian schooling was very big. I went to public school, but Christian schooling was very big, or starting to pop up a lot more when I was growing up. I've seen a lot of people, and I don't want to speak against Christian schooling at all. That's not my intention. But my intention is to say that if, as a dad, you can, even if they go to Christian school or have lots of Christian friends, if they encourage their daughters to be members of the world, not citizens of the world, right? Citizens of heaven, but members of the world, and go out and meet the people who need to be loved, and need to be inspired, and need to meet Jesus. If they can be part of the world, but then also protected from the evil one, because that's the other half of the prayer, right? I don't want them to be removed from the world, but protect them from the evil one. And that's my prayer for daughters. It is a fallen world. We taught the two kind of deeper chapters in our book that kind of go that next step are your daughter and her brokenness. So there's that fallen nature in her, because we're human, because it's a broken system that we're living in right now. Her brokenness, but then your daughter and the fallen world. So the world that she's going to have to walk into. And the fact is that I know that every girl dad held their daughter, and I know this about my dad. I would bet good money on you, Tony, that you held Shiloh in your arms when she was first born, and you said, I will not let anything happen to you. I will protect you with my last breath. I will defend you. I will take care of you with everything that I am. And that's a beautiful sentiment from a dad. But it's unrealistic at the end of the day, because even if you safeguard her and put her, in a bubble for 18 years, at some point she's going to step out into that world. And so for dads, I want them to empower their daughter, be realistic with their daughter about what's happening, but also partner with them to, again, be a part of the solution, certainly. But for the daughters, my prayer is be sure of who you are in Jesus. Be sure of who you are in terms of your gifts and your abilities. Build up that foundation. And if you can come out of your adolescence, right, confident in who you are, both as a Christian, as a woman, what your hopes are, what your dreams are, how you can be a force for the kingdom of heaven, then everything is, even when it's hard, even when that world falls around you, even when you have that internal brokenness, if you can stay sure in who you are and work to do that, and then and your dad's going to mess up sometimes, right? Give him grace, but you can hold on to that relationship. So that would be my prayer.
Come on, Pastor Rayanne. Let's pass the offering plate. What do we do? Let's go.
I'm going to jump real quickly out of that, if I may. Girl dads out there, when your 15-year-old turns defiant and starts questioning everything, that's good news. Right. That's her job. She's supposed to go through that. So celebrate that defiance, because she has to figure it out for herself. She has to figure it out for herself. You can't make a decision for Christ. You can't make it for her. She's got to choose that for herself. And if she chooses it when she's 7, that's awesome. That's great. And I'm not going to get into any theology when she's saved or heaven bound. But she has to choose that somewhere between the ages of 12 and 18. She's got to make a true choice that's deep conviction that she's going to stick it out. And then she's got to keep making that decision every day. Again, not getting into any theology here, but you should celebrate her defiance. That's a really weird thing to say, and I hope dads understand that I'm not saying when she goes off the deep end to applaud. Sure, you got work to do. Sure. You got work to do. So when Shiloh, sweet little Shiloh, who we met before this interview, goes off the deep end for a day or two or a year or two, keep loving her, my friend. Keep loving her. And here's the point: if she walks away and slams her door, when she walks away and slams her door, you need to go back upstairs, down the hallway, knock on the door, and say, "Sweetheart, Shiloh." Again, I'm sorry, but sweetheart, I love you so much. I hate it when we get this way, but I'm trying to understand. I love you so much. You know that I would die for you, and I'm on your team, sweetheart. Let's talk again real soon. So that every conversation needs to end with you pulling her towards you and not pushing her away. That's
So I love you, but I'm taking the doors off the hinges. Not the right approach.
Well, there's other reasons for that too, and I know dads. I've not had to do that.
I know.
But
It's all good. Yeah.
but I actually recommend that in the right time, in the right place.
Sure.
Son of a gun. Yeah.
Okay, I have one more question for you guys. It's by far the hardest question of the whole podcast. I know. Rayanne's like, I don't know about this. But before I do it, I know that people are going to want to find you on the interwebs. Jay, I know that there's probably somebody listening right now who's like, man, I need to bring him to Dayton, Ohio. How do they get in touch with you? How do they learn all the things? What's the best way to learn all things Jay and Rayanne?
Well, let me jump in. The name Payleitner is impossible to spell, but I'll do it quickly anyways. jpayleitner.com is my website. There's all kind of stuff there, all my books and such. Jay, last name PAYLEITNER.com. You know what? You can search for Girl Dad. I think there's actually 2 other books out there called Girl Dad. So don't get confused.
We'll link to it in the show notes, so anybody can just link to it in the show notes. There,
but if you the way to find us is on the website. Books are of course available on Amazon. They will be in bookstores, whether they have to order or not. I don't know. But
Rayanne, are you on the internet anywhere? You're hard to find.
I think, I'm a few different places, but mostly my other work, my business and consulting work, not as much author written, but I'll write on his coattails on jpayleitner.com for Girl Dad, certainly.
Perfect. Okay, last question I love to ask people. It's an advice question, except I ask you to go back and give yourself one piece of advice, and I get to name the season of life that you're in when you do it. Okay, and Jay, I'm going to go to you first, and I'm going to go to the day that Rayanne was born. The day she came home from the hospital shortly thereafter. If you could pull up a chair in front of that younger version of yourself, that father of now 5, if you could sit knee to knee with him, hold his hands, look him in the eyes, and give him one piece of advice, what would it be?
The day Rayanne was born, I took her 4 older brothers down to the Target up 10 miles away, and we saw Michael W. Smith. That's crazy. Rayanne and Mom were in the hospital. There you go. So that's just very amusing about that day. But because I had 4, she has 4 older brothers who were at that time between 5 and 13 or something like that, 5 and 14. I would tell Jay, it's like, I would say, keep doing what you're doing. Just keep loving these kids. It's crazy. Your life is going to get even crazier in the next 5 years, 10 years, but you're going to miss these days. Someday down the road, you're going to miss these days. Tony, you are living right now. Just you got 2 at home, 3 at home.
3. I got 3.
At home. You're going to miss these days. You're crazy. You're going all kinds of places. You're going to miss these days. So that's not a big piece of advice. That's just a reality that just keep pulling your hair out and keep driving and keep doing the work, Jay, and listen to your wife, because your wife has great insight. The beautiful, wonderful Rita. We wouldn't be here. Rayanne and I wouldn't be here doing this without the lovely Rita Payleitner, who married me 43 years ago. Holy cats.
That's
there you
amazing.
go. There you
love that. Okay, Rayanne, it's your turn. Go back and give yourself one piece of advice. And I want to take you specifically to the day after high school graduation. As I jump into your story, I feel like there's been so many changes in your life since that day. And a lot of twists and turns, and here you are now, an author of what will hopefully become a best-selling book. If you could go back and give that younger version of Rayanne one piece of advice, sit knee to knee with her, look her in the eyes, what's the one thing you're going to tell her?
Well, the day after high school graduation, 1 week later, my brother got married. The next week, I had a graduation party. And then the next week, I headed off to Beast, which was basic training. And I had, like I mentioned earlier, I had a lot of plans, right? That 18-year-old had a lot of plans, very sure of what the next decade of her life was going to be. And she had gone through some stuff, certainly was about to go through a lot of stuff in the next couple of years. And if I was talking to her, I would say, here's my realistic / pessimistic point coming out a little bit, but it would almost be, hey, you know what? You're strong. You are strong, and your strength is actually, it's gonna hurt you a little bit here coming up, because you're so sure that you will get through it, but you're so sure that it has to be you who's holding the line. And I go, and you'll get through it. I go, but I would say lean into the hurt a little bit. Let it happen. It's going to change you. It's going to change the trajectory of your life. It's going to change everything, the people around you as well. But don't be afraid to lock arms with the people next to you that love you. Let them hold you up. Let them continue to love you and be open with them. And certainly don't lean away from Jesus, lean towards Jesus. I again, like every relationship out there, I view a relationship with Jesus in a few different ways, right? There's, king and citizen. There's a bunch of different ways to look at it. But the way that I found the most impactful to define my relationship with Jesus is as a friend, and a friend who wants you to come to them. They can't do 100% of the walk to you. You have to walk to them. And so that would be my advice for 18-year-old Rayanne. Buckle up, batten down the hatches a little bit. You're going to be all right. It's going to be different, but you're going to be all right. But link arms with the people around you and lean into Jesus. And I think that would be good advice for anyone going through phase change, right? Going through the unexpected, and have a little bit of forgiveness for yourself when you fail to do those things, and don't feel guilty about that after the fact. Just do what you can, do the work that's in your hands, get up and do what you can every day.
Okay, Pastor, I'm telling you, if you're not preaching, I don't know what's happening. Guys, thank you so much. This was so fun. I appreciate it. Just know that if there's anything I can do to continue to support your ministry as we both continue on, I would love to do so. Thank you for putting such an important and impactful resource in the world. I really appreciate our time today.
Tony, what a privilege. Thank you. Let's talk again sometime. And I appreciate you very, very much. And God bless your relationship with Shiloh. I will be looking forward to a good report on that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tony. Wonderful to spend some time with you and your hard questions, but it made us think a little bit deeper.
Whew. I love this conversation with Jay and Rayanne. I think it's such a good one for girl dads and for me. And honestly, I loved connecting with them. They got a great story. I expect so much more out of both of them. Love, love, love the way God is working in and through their ministry. Do me a favor, guys. Follow them on social media. Let them know that you're out there and you heard them on the podcast. I'm really thankful that it's a great opportunity to connect with people who are really impacting my life and the way that I parent. Guys, I'm thankful for you and the community that we're building here today. Remember, if you want to follow Jesus, you must be willing to move.